Well, today we're going to talk to a real rocket scientist, but this is not going to be about launching satellites into space or anything like this. Stephen Findlay Archer has been writing fascinating romance novels about the Irish Revolution in the 20th century and their connectivity to our own ongoing fight for a more perfect union in the same time frame. He has a very unique reason for writing about this topic as it relates to his aerospace history. So please welcome the author of The Irish Clans, Book 1, Searchers, Stephen Findlay Archer. And Stephen, I mean, a real rocket scientist that now writes romantic novels about Irish history. This is unreal.
Thank you, Suzanne, for the opportunity to talk to your listeners today.
Yeah.
It is true that I was a manager in an aerospace firm that designed, built, produced, and launched communications and weather satellites for 35 years. And you know how they say that any career is not rocket science?
Absolutely.
Well, as a former rocket scientist, I'm here to tell you that that business doesn't hold a candle to the complexity, innovation, imagination, and perseverance of becoming a published author.
Really? I think every author watching this is like, yes, Stephen, tell it. You know, it is, there's a lot of complexities. There's a lot to it. So thank you for sharing that on behalf of every author that's watching this. So Stephen, go ahead and share your journey with us. I mean, exactly how did you get from rocket science to writing these novels?
Yeah, well, when I retired from aerospace, I wanted to do something to keep my brain active. And I'd written poetry all my career of aerospace, but nothing more substantial than that. And so I took some courses in writing. And what started as a memoir of my Irish heritage, because my grandfather and my mother are in my story, has evolved into an epic tale of romance in the Irish Revolutionary period of the early 20th century. And it's a fictitious story, but I've embedded my fictitious characters in the history, and I've used historical characters to help with the fictitious story. So
it's a fine line, right?
Yeah, I know,
Yeah,
you've got to be careful.
Yeah.
But I have therefore immersed my readers in the history, and I found from the readers that they find, even if they're not history buffs, that they find that because they get involved with my characters, they really enjoy the history part.
We're talking about treasure hunts and all kinds of fun things, right?
Right. So the fictitious story includes treasure hunts, and I use relics of the Gaelic civilization, real relics, as the clues. And I'm hoping that at the end of the day, when the readers are finished reading this whole series, that they will wonder whether or not this has been fiction or whether they've uncovered history.
That you're thinking deep. And I have a feeling that somehow this is all tying back. There is a thread somehow that's tying back to rocket science.
Well, yeah, from that perspective, as I mentioned, I built communication satellites as part of my career. And I've been really concerned about the fact that those systems and the microprocessor technology that has enabled, you know, our watches and our cell phones and so forth has created an instantaneous but unfettered communication system worldwide, which can be misused. And in fact, as we know, has been misused recently for propaganda to negatively impact our democracy in an ever shrinking and complex world. And so this bothered me a lot. And what was my heritage, if you will, from a technology point of view. So I'm hoping that through immersion in the Irish Revolution in my novels, that my readers would remember how our forefathers fought and died for our freedom, and how we should carry on the fight to live by and preserve our own Constitution.
Wow. If you had to say to someone, just a couple words on what this book is not. Like, set some expectations. This book is not what?
A child's book.
It's not political. It's not what? Yeah. It's not what?
A child's book of verses.
It's not to be taken lightly.
It's not. It's a fun story. I'm hoping that you'll love it. It's not just a historical, detailed, dry story about the history of the Irish Revolution, but it is engrossing, and the characters are embedded in the revolution. So you get a good feeling for what was going on in Ireland. And it kind of relates back to, the 1770s here in the United States as well. So after all, we were fighting against the same oppressive tyrant, Britain.
And I was just going to say, with having some heritage, some Irish heritage in your blood, this would be especially appealing to you.
Yeah, I mean, we had been to Ireland 2 or 3 times before I started the series. And, I did my book launch in a pub in Dublin.
Wow.
On the first book, on Searchers. There's the book cover there.
Beautiful.
And because that pub was in my novel, and we were there for St. Patrick's Day with 500,000 people. And it was 2016, which was the 100th anniversary of the Easter Rising, which is what's in my 3rd novel, is The Rising, called The Rising. And there were 500,000 people that came to commemorate that. So it was a pretty exciting time in Ireland back in 2016.
Stephen, real quick, let's talk about the overall series.
Yes, as I said, there's 7 novels in total. The 5th one is coming out early, and for St. Patrick's Day this year, and there's 2 more after that. I'm hoping that all of it will be done in the next 2 or 3 years, and my readers are really looking forward to every book as it comes out, and I don't want to disappoint them by keeping them on tenterhooks, since I leave everyone with a cliffhanger. So. But the one thing to note is that this is not like a series of novels that stand independently.
That's exactly where I'm going. Yes, we want you to start with Searchers, right? We want you to start with book 1.
Yeah, you should start at the beginning and go through it. It doesn't mean you couldn't read any book and enjoy it, but it is one story that you want to follow through from the beginning to the end. It's kind of like a Dan Brown novel, because there's a lot of religious connotations going back before even the time of the cleanse to some of the saints. And it's kind of like a National Treasure movie because of this, using the relics and the romance and looking for the treasures. And the whole premise is that the ancient clan leaders left these treasures to be found at the time for revolution, so they could be used to fuel a revolution. So.
Sounds amazing. I want to encourage you, check this out. It is going to be just a fantastic series. Start with book 1, The Irish Clans, Searchers, Stephen Findlay Archer. Thank you so much for joining us today. And when you pick up this book and you read it, Stephen, would you just share briefly on how important it is to give you a rating on this?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Oh, I was just saying how important it is to give a rating when you read an author's book.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, and you can definitely go to my website, stephenfindlayarcher.com, and you can sign up for my subscriber list, so you get information on what's going on and Irish information, and you can purchase my novels there as well.
Love it. Stephen, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're very welcome. Thanks very much, Suzanne, for allowing me to talk to your listeners.